Sometimes there's a fight that happens and you want both sides to continue fighting because you don't like either of them. I can think of a few wars that are like that, but sometimes it's the opposite. It's almost like a kid watching mom and dad quarrel, and all you want is for them to get along. Well, that second way is how I felt, and I bet millions of others on the right side of the spectrum felt when they saw Donald Trump and Elon Musk having a very public falling out on Twitter, of all places. I think that it may have been inevitable when two of the most powerful personalities, always the alpha dog in any room they're in, come together. Well, they had some wonderful moments, but they were sure to clash. One's the most powerful man in the world, one's the richest and maybe the smartest man in the world. Are they really going to get along? Well, joining us now to talk about this is someone who follows both of them very closely. I'm talking about our friend Allum Bokhari. He's the managing director of the Foundation for Freedom Online, and he joins us now from Austin, Texas. I don't know, I hated seeing the quarrel, Allum, because I like both men so much, and when they were together, it was like Batman and Superman teaming up. I thought there's nothing they can't do. And then I see them really going hard at each other. My heart sunk a bit.
Yeah, and there's been simmering tensions between, the so-called tech right, of which, Elon is kind of the prime representative, and the core MAGA right. For a while, we saw those tensions flare up back in December over H-1B visas. It does look like Elon Musk and Donald Trump have buried the hatchet now. There's been some conciliatory statements, which I think is very good. And I'm going to get into why they had the falling out to begin with in a second. But first, let's talk about why the tech right and the MAGA right actually need to stick together. And the big reason, one of the biggest reasons, I think, is just coming up next month. The European Union's previously voluntary code of practice on disinformation becomes mandatory for all tech companies under the Digital Services Act, which is the European Union's behemoth of online regulation. Mm-hmm. And that is going to fine U.S. tech companies up to 6% of their global revenues, their annual global revenues, if they don't comply with the demands of faceless European bureaucrats to censor so-called hate speech, to censor so-called disinformation. And you can say this is just a European law, but we've seen in the past the European Union and top European Union officials like Thierry Breton going after platforms like X for purely American speech. So, the European Union started complaining that they allowed Trump back in, I think it was 2023 or 2022. So they see American speech as a problem, and they're going to use the weight of their regulation, their regulatory apparatus, to crush these tech companies that defy them. In fact, we also saw Nina Jankowicz, who was
she was the singer, yeah. The digital commissioner.
Yes, the digital commissioner, briefly head of the DHS Disinformation Governance Board. She was going to run the whole U.S. Anti-disinformation apparatus. And she recently went before the European Parliament, talked to European policymakers, and encouraged them to stand up to what she called the fascist regime developing in America. She encouraged the Europeans to use their power against her own government that she used to work for, simply because it's under new management now. So this is a threat that's looming. This massive piece of anti-disinformation legislation regulation goes into effect next month. And the only way it can really be fought, I think, is if the MAGA right and the tech right stand together. It can be fought. We can get into how it can be fought. But it's something where, if the European Union wins, then MAGA voices won't be able to speak, and tech companies will face these enormous fines. And, they'll have the European boot on their neck telling them what to do. So it's really in the interest of both factions to come together and fight this thing.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that fine. I think you said 6%. Canada introduced the Online Harms Act under Justin Trudeau. It was dropped when Parliament was prorogued, but I think they're going to bring it back. That had fines, I think, of up to 8%. And if I recall the legislation, it was per incident. Like, it's just such a massive amount. And the idea that a Canadian censor could demand that an American company silence someone or pay, it was, I think, 8% of global revenues. It just, I mean, it's an expropriation. And I mean, I thought that that was actually the way we would be saved, Allum, would be that the United States would say, you're not going to destroy our most vigorous tech sector. Hey, let me throw something at you. I remember when Mark Zuckerberg announced his change, and you and I talked about this, and he said he was going to be more free speechy, and he specifically said, with the help of the State Department, because you can't stand, if you're a company, no matter how big you are, you can't stand up to a foreign country. If you want to operate there, you got to follow their rules. So, you know, even a powerful gazillionaire like Zuckerberg cannot beat Brazil or France if they don't have a government behind them. Is that promise of support still there? What gave Zuckerberg the courage to be strong? What's giving Elon Musk the courage to be strong? Is that still there? Even if Trump isn't talking to Elon Musk, is that policy platform still there?
I believe so. Marco Rubio has discussed this, you know, with the founder of my foundation, Mike Benz. He had a long discussion addressing this very topic. J.D. Vance, the vice president, has also addressed this many, many times before, the danger of censorship regulation in both the EU and other foreign nations like the UK. There's a very easy, well, I won't say easy, nothing is easy in Washington, but there's a very simple solution for this. The DSA and regulations like this, they're not just a sledgehammer of regulation, they're a nuclear bomb of regulation. As you said, 8% of global revenues per incident. The purpose of a regulation like that is simply to get tech companies to have a hair trigger response to anything that might violate what these bureaucrats don't want to see on social media: hate speech, disinformation, you name it. The way to neutralize them, the US can do this unilaterally through trade policy. You simply have a tariff that is equal to the amount of the fine that is then rebated to the company that faces the fine. So say Facebook or X, they get a 6% fine of their global revenues because they allowed some sort of disinformation post that the EU didn't like. That fine turns into a tariff on European companies, so that the European companies are effectively paying the fine, which is then rebated back to the tech company that triggered it. So that effectively neutralizes the effect of any of these regulations completely, and it makes the European companies pay for it. So if that goes on long enough, then eventually the regulations will simply have to go. But it's still a big policy ask, and it will need real momentum in DC, despite the support of people like J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio. To get a policy like that, you need a campaign for it in DC. And that's why the tech right and the MAGA right need to stand together, because defeating online censorship is in both of their interests. If online censorship comes back, neither the tech right nor the MAGA right will ever get anything that they want, whether it's policy cuts, closing the borders, or anything else you can name.
You are so right. You know, I've never met Donald Trump, but my observations of him, you probably follow him just as closely, more closely. I think he can be quick to anger, but I think he can also be quick to forgive. And one example I'll give to you is he was really shooting hard verbally at Carlos Slim, the oligarch who owns the New York Times. He's a Mexican billionaire. And he was really going after him like almost every day. And then you see the two of them having a nice dinner and a smile for the camera. And I think Trump is always thinking about a transaction or what can I get? And sometimes I think he actually likes it when he has a rapprochement with someone who was mean to him, because I think in his mind he thinks, oh, this guy owes me something. He said something so mean to me. I can either hold it in my heart and be upset, or I can say, he owes me one. I want to meet with him now because to expiate his sin, he'll give me something. I think Trump actually loves kissing and making up because he sees it as an opportunity to get something. Now, that's just my 1,000 miles away hunch. I think we've seen Elon Musk already say some friendly things on Twitter. He deleted a really mean tweet where he accused Trump of being in the Jeffrey Epstein files, which, by the way, I don't really believe, because if that were true, it would have come out under the Biden or Harris administrations, or I guess Harris didn't have her own administration, but I don't believe that. Any dirt on Trump is already out there, and if they would have had something like that. Anyways, my point is, I think they're going to kiss and make up. I think Trump probably just wants Elon Musk to eat a little bit more humble pie first.